Hey guys, welcome back to my Lost in Space robot build. I know it's been a while, but the summertime is here, and basically we can get started up again because we can actually get things painted and things like that. So anyway, so today's episode is actually going to be on completing the entire head section. We're going to backtrack a little bit, and we've made some design choice changes from what I originally had talked about on the previous video about the neck build. So we're going to change it around a little bit. So I decided to make the neck static instead of moving up and down, only because it's not like it's impossible, but the engineering behind the movement up and down and being able to rotate with the radar section is super complicated. And just because of the wiring running down through the center here, so wires don't get tangled up in gears and all kinds of stuff, it's just it's doable, but it will probably take me a year just to get through that piece of it. And play with it and everything else. So I decided that it wasn't actually one of the most important features, and that I would just leave it as a static position and then finish out the complete head section. So my goal is to be able to take this head section and have a quick disconnect on it where I can disconnect it from the entire rest of the robot. So that way, if I'm transporting the robot, he comes apart in three sections: the head, the middle section, the torso, and then of course the legs. So that's our goal here, and we pretty much want to have everything functioning here. So radar section moving, sensors, the finger lights that you saw before, the brain, and everything else. And so our video is basically going to be to complete this entire thing, including the bubble and everything, and be finished with it. So what do we have to do now? All right, so basically, I talked about that aluminum section I was going to use for the neck before, but since I'm not going to be moving it up and down, we're going to take a different approach here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a PVC piping here. So this is 1.5 inch piping, which fits perfectly inside the opening here in the radar section. And so what we've done is we've kind of measured it out to the height that we want it, basically, and then we've done a couple of things here. So what we did is, once we got our height, we glued on a collar here just with PVC cement so that it'll have a place to rest perfectly. So when it goes into the radar section, it's a nice snug fit, and then it'll just sit there like that. And then what'll happen is we will have, there's a bunch of holes here for mounting different things, and then underneath we'll be able to run wires that we need to. I'll show you that in a second. And then what happens is this silicone sleeve goes over here, and this will be trapped in between this and the machined neck support here. And what happens is this will go down on here. You can see I've got some holes here for screws where the screws will go in. And then these cut pieces of plastic here, just these rings, will support all the ribs here in the silicone to make it clean. And what I've done is I made it so that basically the height of this is just a little compressed. So you'll see once we get it down here, it'll be sort of like compressed where it'll always have a little bit of tension on the bottom. That way I don't actually have to glue anything here. It'll always sort of keep it inside the radar section by itself, and I won't have to worry about it. So it's down just a little, about that height, and then with the rings in here, these will all stay perfectly formed. And then we can put in the motor and the brain and all the stuff that goes on top. But one of the key things to this design is on the bottom here, hopefully we can see this on the camera. What I've done here is I've drilled a hole right here so I can run this wire inside here and down the center, so that when the radar section turns, it's not going to hang up on these gears right here, which is what this wire would do. This wire is feeding the voltage regulator and all the power for the ear sensors. So this will come down here, And the finger lights and all those things from the brain will also come down through here, so nothing will get tangled in these gears. And then these for the motors are just by themselves here. So, and then we have a little hole here we put for a screw that will just screw in, and that will just make sure it doesn't, can never fall out. Although, to be honest with you, this would be never tilted. Like if I was taking this off the robot, it would always stay in this vertical position here, and this just can't fall out. It's a snug fit, and it's just not possible. So there's really no real reason to put the screw there. It's just an extra safety measure. So what I did is I drilled holes into my neck, tapped them out, and then the drilled holes in the PVC pipe, right, that this is going to go on, and basically that'll go on like that, and screw those in, and that'll be nice and tight. Then the bottom plate gets screwed here with the other pieces, and then the brain goes up from there. And that's pretty much what it's going to look like. So all we have to do now is kind of get our brain assembled. So this will be first. We'll put on the next piece, and then the wires get run down, and all this stuff comes out the bottom. And then we'll be able to actually get it all wired up and things like that. So it's a little bit tricky because it's hard to flip this over while you're working on it without damaging stuff. It's sturdy, but it's fragile sort of at the same time, and we don't want to scratch anything either. So that's one of the sort of tricks with this. Now, the other thing we have to do is just to make sure, even though it probably wouldn't move, we have to make sure that this shaft doesn't move this way ever. Just from the radar section rotating. So what we need to do is, you see there's a keyway in the back here. So we're gonna have to we're gonna drill a hole, put a screw here, and that is gonna lock into that keyway so that we have it aligned basically. And then no matter how the radar section turns, this will always turn and be the same way. The reason we don't want this turning by itself is because the brain is on top of here with the two eyes, and basically they always should be aligned with whichever way the radar section is facing. So these two ear sensors here line up with the eyes, and everything should always rotate together. And so that's what we're going to do there. So what we have to do now that we have this all done, we pretty much got it cut. We have all our holes drilled and everything. Just put our screw in, get this mounted in here. Then we'll get the silicone sleeve put on. We'll get this mounted onto that, and then everything will be ready to assemble into this radar section. Then we'll just start attaching the brain and getting all that on there. All right, so there's our neck mounted to our shaft here, and then we've got our silicone piece right here. Now, so if I pull this down right here, you can kind of see there's my screw inside here that's holding this onto the shaft, right? And that's it. So basically the silicone is trapped in between there, and that's what holds it at the top piece right here. So now what we want to do is we want to put our plastic rings that we have here. So this is a set of rings, and they all fit inside each one of these ribs right here to keep them in shape so they don't collapse. Because the silicone is very tough, but it's also very, it doesn't have a lot of structure to it. So we need these extra little support rings. These are just plastic rings, shaved rings, that's all they are, from a piece of plastic. And they go down in size from smallest to largest. And you just put them in order, and you put them down all through there. Then we're ready to actually slide this in, and you can see what it looks like. Okay, so we've got our rings in our bellows now, so that will keep the shape. So these will always stay the same shape here. Okay, the other thing we did is we put this screw in here. We just screwed it into PVC. So this is the key that's going to go into this portion right here, which is this keyway, and that keyway is basically keeping. When the radar section turns here, basically it's keeping this in line, so always be in the same position. So like for instance, these 4 mounting holes right here will turn with the radar section. Everything would always be the same. So if I have this This is the back here because there's a seam back here for this black shroud that has 2 screws. So that's the back. This is basically centered like on the back here. The keyway is facing towards the back. And then this keyway, this will go into the keyway. So when I put it in here, basically I line up the keyway. It fits right in there. So you can see when I turn this, everything turns at once, right? They're all locked together. And then I'm going to take the bellows and you just sort of like lay it inside the groove here. And because it has enough tension on it, because I have it squeezed down just enough, it stays perfectly and everything stays in shape. So you can see right there, I pull this down right here so you guys can see this a little better, but basically you can see that everything stays in shape. And this is the height that I've chosen to keep it at, which is sort of the upper height. Not quite the highest, but not quite the lowest either. So I've got it sort of at a semi-high height, medium to high I'd call it. Okay, and that's it as far as that goes. Now underneath here, because I have everything lined up, you'll see the wire here is going to go through a hole that's right here, and it's going to come down then the center of this pipe. And that way this radar section can actually spin 365 degrees without having any problems. Now I did drill a hole here for a screw. I'm not sure if that screw is going to clear this gear. So I'm going to put this screw in here, see if it clears the gear. If it does, then that secures the neck inside the radar section. Then at that point, I'm ready to start mounting everything on top here. All right, the next piece is to get the crown motor mounted in there. So it just has a cable coming down off of it, and it's just going to fall through the center shaft there. It does have 2 rubber grommets here for vibration control, and there's 3 little grommets right here that mount the motor to this plate. Now the plate has a hole in the back. This is where all the wires coming down from the brain will go through down, so you got to make sure this is lined up with a groove that's in the back here. And then I put a little double-sided foam tape right here just as to keep it, since there's only 2 mounting points, to keep it from rocking, so it'll keep it perfectly level. So we just got to put that down, put the 2 screws here, and then this part is ready to go. Then we can put the shaft on. Alright, so there it is. There's the motor, which is mounted on this plate, which is rubber grommets all the way around, and then 2 rubber grommets that mount the plate to the neck piece. And there's just some foam tape in between here just to keep it completely level so it doesn't tilt one way or the other. And then we have the shaft here, which has a little Allen key to tighten it up on here, and a little Loctite and all these things to make sure it doesn't come loose. And then what we want to do is just, you know, as you go along, of course, we always want to test everything just to make sure that there's no issues. So we're just going to power this up real quick here and then see if it turns. Alright, so that's good. So we got our shaft turning here, so everything's looking good. And we're ready for the next piece. So the next piece is actually going to be the bottom part of the bubble, which is this clear plexiglass piece. And the way this works is we're just going to lay it on here. We're going to keep the plastic on to protect it from scratching, but basically it's going to go on here like so. The 4 holes line up here that are in the neck piece, and then the brain is going to go on top of this. Now it's a little tricky because we have all these wires that are coming down from the finger lights in the brain that have to go through this hole. They got to be fed all through down, and then finally put the brain on top there. So we got to get it all lined up first, and then just check everything to make sure it's all going to work correctly. So we're going to basically put this together and just see how it looks. We're going to make sure the shaft is at the right height here. So we're going to put the brain on, and going to put the top on and the crown on, and make sure everything is clearing and we got no problems. And then all we're going to do is basically there's 4 screws here that will screw up into the bottom of the cone that holds the brain, and then we can take this plexiglass off and clean it and get ready for the bubble. Alright, so next piece is the bottom of the bubble. So this is the clear piece that goes on the base here, or the neck I should say, and there's 4 holes that basically line up with the 4 holes on the neck piece here. And then that's it. And so what'll happen is the brain goes on top here now, and 4 screws will come up from the bottom and clamp that together, and that will be the main piece. Now this pretty much will self-center itself because these holes are pretty exact here, so you don't have to really worry about that. You want to be careful you don't scratch it, it has 4 very tiny holes around here which will adhere the top part, clamp down the top part of the bubble once that gets on there. So alright, so the next part is to actually get the hardest part done, which is get the brain on, and we have to fish all the wires coming down from the brain, and there's a whole bunch of them that are kind of come down here through this hole, and it's very tight squeeze inside there to get them through. But once that's through, then the brain will just sit right on top here and we should be ready to go. Alright, so there it is with the bottom plate sandwiched in between the brain here, and basically there are 4 screws right here that go around the base, and that clamps it together, and they're machined into the neck, or the base of the brain itself. So then here's the brain, and then here's the shaft coming up from the top there, and then we've got down there the wires that are running down the shaft all the way through the bottom here. So we got everything we needed. The arms are loose, so everything looks good there. So now the next piece is to get the push rods in these little holes right here, and then get our cam on, and then make sure that the finger lights work correctly. So let me get the little push rods and we'll put those in there. Alright, so there they are. You can see there are these little push rods here that basically go in right here, and they land on the bottom of the little finger lights here. So that's what drives them up and down. Now, I use this stuff here called Dry Lock as a lubricant, just to give it a little lubricant, although they're really perfectly machined, so it doesn't really need much, but just a little lubricant. And we don't want something that will attract dirt like oil. Don't use like 3-in-1 oil or little oil, because that will attract dirt. They'll gum up and then you'll have problems later on. So the other thing we want to do is now we're going to put the cam on, and that cam is made out of a sort of a nylon. And because it's made out of nylon, we want to use a white grease sort of on the end where these little push rods are going to ride, and it's used for plastics basically. So I'm using the same stuff I use for my model trains because it's made for plastic. So let me go grab the cam and we'll lube that up and put that on. Alright, so like I said, the next piece is this cam, which has basically it's like you can see it, what goes up and down is in a wave, and when you put the cam on here and it centers inside the head, you can see the little finger lights down below here. You see how they raised up, and now you see when I turn it, they move up and down, right? So what we want to do before we tighten this up, it's just an Allen screw here, is we want to lube this up a little bit. So we're going to use this stuff called PTFE grease. It's made for plastics. And what we're going to do is we're going to put some lubricant there where the push rods ride. We're also going to put it here where this rides inside this hole here. And then, but we do not want to put it in the center shaft here because we don't want this to spin. This is going to have the set screw on it that's going to hold it to the shaft, so when the shaft spins, this spins. So we're going to lube this up and then put this down, and then we're going to tighten up that set screw. Alright, so the next piece is the top plate here, and you can see I have it in place, but basically there are 2 connectors right here that connect the plate, and then all the holes just line up, so there'll be 3 screws on the top that hold it on, and the shaft comes through the hole right there. So just 1, 2, 3, and that's all finished. Then we got one more piece on top here, which is the crown, and we're ready to clean everything and vacuum it and put the bubble on. Alright, so there we go. So there is the finished bubble. So there's just 4 little screws that sort of hold the bottom plate to the bubble there. You got to be super careful when you're drilling this stuff. You can easily crack it. These things are so hard to come by because the company that forms them, only makes them so often, so it's really difficult to get. I broke one when I dropped it, so yeah, not the greatest feeling when that happens, but I had ordered two just in case for that exact reason. So anyway, so there it is. That's the finished enclosed brain. There's the crown and finger lights, and this is all enclosed within the bubble. Then you have, of course, the neck and the radar section and the collar. And then we got all these wires coming out of here, which is for all the motors and lights and everything that are going to come out there. Now, the other thing we still have to do is we have the ear sensors that go on here on the ear motors. And then we're ready to hook it up to the electronics. So we got a couple things. We've got, of course, our board that we're going to use for the brain control, flashing lights and everything on the top there. We've got a buck converter here. We're going to take 12 volts and crank that down to like 5 for the finger lights. And then the motor itself that rotates the crown and operates the lights is 12 volts too. So we got a couple of things. And basically what's going to happen is this is all going to be bundled into one single sort of connector eventually. And so that you'll be able to take the top off and just have one single connector that connects this portion to the rest of the robot. And so we're going to get all these bundled together, and then really all we're after is inside here, you know, there's a section that, you know, this obviously is turning, so the wires in there have to turn with it and make sure everything is free, but that's about it. Yeah, that's where we are so far. So a couple more steps and the entire head of the robot will be complete and ready to go. Now, I think what we're going to try to do is, if we can, it'd be easier if we could mount some of these electronics underneath the collar here itself. I mean, we basically have the room, and there's nothing underneath there that rotates on the collar itself. So I'm going to get some standoffs here for these boards, and then we're going to like try to get these mounted under there. That will take all these wires kind of, and they go to these boards, and then I think both of these will be fed by a 12 volt feed. So pretty much everything from the waist up we want to have as 12 volts, and then we're just going to knock everything down using these converters. So, and that's pretty much it. So that's our next step, and then we'll come back and we'll see the final head totally functioning and running, and that'll be it for that portion. All right, guys, so here we are. We got the completed head section. We do have the wiring running to the right there with all the modules, but let me show you what it looks like. So we've got our radar sensors down here. We've got our finger lights you can see here, and they're blinking. I do have one issue. One of the finger lights is not lighting, this one right here. Not sure if it's just a burned out bulb, a loose bulb, or a wiring problem, so we'll have to check that out. So another good tip, I thought I checked these all out before I put the bubble on, but luckily it's only 4 screws to get that off and then try to fix that. We have the brain lights, you can see blinking here. You got the 2 eyes, you got the lights on the top, and then we got the crown going around right here. And then we can also make it move. So he's thinking, he's looking in different directions. He's looking to the left, he's looking to the right. He's talking.
I am a robot, model B-9 of the class M3, programmed to provide information and support to all members of this household. Why did a robot cross the road? Because he was carbon bonded to the chicken. Ha 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 ha.
So that's pretty much it. But you get the point, basically, right? So we have pretty much a completed head here. If we look a little closer, you can get more details of what's going on here. But you can see you have the brain lights blinking there. I know there's a reflection off the bubble there, but And again, we're controlling everything right now through the Xbox controller, right? So, but eventually those will be automated tasks and things like that. And that is a completed brain of a Lost in Space B-9 robot. Okay guys, well that's it for the B-9 head section of the robot. It is now complete and you see how it all functions. Hope you enjoyed the video. As always, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, put your comments down below. Let me know what you thought about this video, and I will see you on the next episode of the Robot Build. Peace guys.